to East Asia now and China's latest show of force against Taiwan. It's ended a day of military drills around the self-governed island in what it says was a stern warning to Taiwan's, quote, separatist forces. Taiwanese authorities say they detected 125 Chinese aircraft, including fighter jets and drones, encircling the island, describing it as a record for a single day. Now, the exercise was China's fourth round of large-scale war games around Taiwan in the past 2 years.
Taiwanese jets soar into the sky. They're scrambling to intercept these Chinese aircraft after Beijing announced their second round of war games encircling Taiwan this year. China's aim, simulating blockades of key Taiwanese ports and testing real combat capabilities. Taiwan's defense ministry said it wouldn't provoke China, but was ready to defend itself.
China's irrational and provocative drills not only threaten stability in the Taiwan Strait, but damage the development of cross-strait relations and peace in the Indo-Pacific.
The exercises include units from China's Navy, Army, Air Force and Rocket Force. They're taking place at 6 locations around Taiwan and near 3 of its outlying islands closer to the Chinese coast.
The drills serve as a stern warning to the separatist acts of Taiwan independence forces. It is a legitimate and necessary operation for safeguarding state sovereignty and national unity.
The drills come just a few days after Taiwan celebrated its National Day, the first under Taiwan's new president, Lai Ching-te. In his address, Lai said Beijing had no right to represent the people of Taiwan, infuriating Beijing. Analysts say the Chinese exercises were expected.
I think it's very easy to look at these sort of high-scale military drills that the PLA puts on after any time a Taiwanese leader makes this kind of speech now and just sort of have this guttural reaction of fear and panic that this could be a pretext to war, and that's absolutely not what this is.
That said, in Taipei, residents can't completely ignore the threat.
Over the past 3 or 4 years, we've felt China's intimidation increase. We have to continue living normally. It does make us increase our vigilance. But for most people, it won't directly impact our daily life.
Washington has urged China to act with restraint. But with Beijing refusing to speak with the Taiwanese government, big questions remain over how tensions can be dialed down.
And we can get more now from Meia Nouwens from the International Institute for Strategic Studies in London. She focuses on Chinese defence policy and the modernisation of its armed forces. Meia, welcome to DW. We just heard Taiwan describe the Chinese high-scale military drills as irrational and provocative. Would you say that's a fair description?
I think from Beijing's perspective, there's always going to be a case in which they respond using military coercion through these types of exercises to signal their displeasure.
OK. China's defense ministry vowed on Monday to take further action against Taiwan if needed. Can you tell us what that could potentially look like?
From Beijing's perspective, we've seen a different number of tools being used for coercion of Taiwan and Taiwanese leaders. That can be either economic coercion, seeking to exclude them from trade agreements, putting pressure on Taiwanese companies, furthermore, limiting exports to Taiwan, can be diplomatic coercion, so further exclusion of Taiwan in international organizations and participation of Taiwan in the international space, or indeed taking away more of Taiwan's last few diplomatic allies through checkbook diplomacy. And of course, more of this type of exercises can always be expected.
In terms of China's current military capabilities and strategy, can you tell us a little bit more about that? Where is China at right now?
Well, China continues to improve its military capability development through immense procurement of more advanced capabilities, and also, of course, ongoing professionalization of the People's Liberation Army's military capabilities as well. However, as we've seen in the last few years, this isn't a smooth, foolproof process. There have been corruption allegations and reports from within the PLA in China and within its defense industrial base. And there continues to be a tussle between their desire to professionalize the military while still maintaining a system of serious political control and demands for loyalty from the PLA to the CCP. We have to remember that the Chinese military isn't a national military in the same sense as Western militaries or others. It is a political organization, an armed wing of the Chinese Communist Party. So it acts slightly differently.
Mm-hmm. Tension in the region has been described as soaring. Would you agree with that statement?
I think tension is certainly increasing. It seems that there are trends that both the Chinese side and others are on that don't seem to be reconciled. The CCP certainly isn't moving away from its claims that at some point reunification from its perspective will be achieved. And on Taiwan's side and the United States and other liberal democracies, of course, the continued survival of Taiwan's democracy and protection of Taiwan's democracy is of key importance to the liberal order. So in that sense, yes, it does seem that tensions are increasing at this point in time. However, I'd say that it doesn't seem that anybody wants full-scale war to actually occur. So when we see these types of exercises, it is important to understand them as an exercise in signaling and also to practice capabilities for the PLA. We have to remember it is a military that hasn't actually fought a war since the border skirmish with Vietnam in 1979.
Meia Nouwens from the International Institute for Strategic Studies in London. Meia, thanks so much for putting all of that in perspective for us. And we can cross to Taipei and bring in our correspondent there, James Chater. James, what message is China sending with these latest military exercises around Taiwan?
Well, absolutely, as you mentioned, we saw these drills taking place at 6 locations around Taiwan's mainland, as well as 3 of Taiwan's outlying islands. These are islands much closer to the Chinese coast. What China's really trying to say here, as you mentioned in that introduction, is send a stern warning to what it calls separatist forces. We heard from Chinese state media in the last hour or so that these drills are understood to have been completed today. That makes just 1 day of military drills, which is shorter than the first iteration of these joint sword exercises that we saw earlier in the year. We understand that these drills are mainly in response to the National Day address of the Taiwan's fairly new president, Lai Ching-te. He gave this address towards the end of last week, in which he said 2 things primarily which were likely to frustrate Beijing. One of which was that he believed Taiwan and China are not subordinate to each other. And another thing he said was that China can't represent the Taiwanese people. This is something that's likely to, of course, frustrate China very much, given that it views Taiwan as part of its territory. And we've seen China enact a response to that speech, again, in keeping with that intensifying effort that China's been trying to apply to Taiwan over the past couple of years.
Now, not surprisingly, Taiwan has condemned these drills. Tell us a little bit more about Taiwan's reaction.
Over the course of today, Taiwan's military has said it's ready to defend the island, and it's also said that it won't provoke China. This is the balancing act that Taiwan really has to strike when it meets these types of moments. On the one hand, protecting its sovereignty at the same time as not being seen to provoke China. We've heard Taiwanese authorities really from across a variety of government ministries come out with their individual responses over the course of today. What the common thread behind those comments is that they believe China is endangering regional security, and they also make the point that they believe that China, in engaging with these types of military drills, really puts the prospect for a peaceful solution to the cross-strait situation in jeopardy. The presidential office, for what it's worth, in Taiwan has reiterated the point. They made this point after Lai's speech at the end of last week in a briefing with reporters. The idea that regardless of who is in office in Taiwan, whether it's the ruling party right now or the opposition party, that they believe this type of military intimidation by China is going to continue. And that's what really they're trying to get across to the international community over the course of today. Again, these drills condemned by the United States as well as the European Union.
James, thanks so much for that update. That's James Chater reporting from Taipei.